Thank you for joining us here on 13 Plus. Yao Bonsu here with AtoZ Sports Lions beat reporter Mike Payton, here to help us preview the Lions season as they open the season against the Rams on Sunday. So if we're going to talk about the Lions, we have to talk about expectations. One of your latest articles, you predicted the Lions to go 13-4, be the top seed in the NFC, and win the Super Bowl. Why?
Well, I just based off this roster, I mean, that's where you got to start. This team has put together quite an offense. We already have seen that last year. They were top 5 offense. The really big difference is what they've done with the defense. They went out and got DJ Reader. They've got Terry and Arnold. They've done a lot with their secondary. This last year, the defense was 13th in DVOA. That's one of the highest metrics that you can have in defense with a secondary as bad as they were last year. If they can get that secondary under control, which based off everything we've seen through camp and preseason, they could be a top 10 defense to go along with that top 5 offense. So along with that, with retaining the coaching staff, with Ben Johnson coming back, Aaron Glenn staying, I mean, there's just so much that is going for this team. It's hard to bet against them.
I'm glad you mentioned the offense. Top 5 offense, we understand. But if there were any concerns, head coach Dan Campbell said it's that wide receiver 3 spot. Yeah. It's safe to assume Khalif Raymond will be in that role. But when you bring in Tim Patrick, Allen Robinson on the practice squad, Isaiah Williams made the team as well, how can either of those 3 receivers step up and play a big role in the Lions offense?
Well, I know everybody loves Isaiah Williams, and he had a tremendous preseason. We all saw it. I think that he'll be a lot like Antoine Green was last year, where they'll kind of make him inactive all year. He'll be kind of a guy that they stash on the 53-man roster, because if they were to let him go, he was going to get claimed. So they had to keep him in some way. But I think Tim Patrick is somebody that they'll probably elevate from the practice squad the first few weeks and see where that goes. And if it does work out, that's, I think, where you're going to be your wide receiver 3, and then Khalif will kind of work in as your backup slot return man, and then he'll do some of his gadget plays and outside things that he does. But yeah, I think Tim Patrick is really going to be someone to watch. He had a tremendous summer with Denver. Probably should have made that team, and he probably would if they didn't have Cortland Sutton and Troy Franklin and some of the guys that they have, Jerry Jeudy. So it was tough for them to cut him, but he wound up in the right place, and I think Detroit's going to be great for him.
And we don't hear much about Jameson Williams. Obviously, he's the wide receiver too, but year 1 in the league, he's recovering from an ACL tear. Year 2, he's suspended for the beginning of the season. How much confidence is there in J-Mo that he can be the guy the Lions want him to be?
It's supreme confidence from the coaching staff. I mean, they look at this guy as somebody that is going to have a huge breakout season. And not just that, but they also see him as someone that has grown tremendously as a person, as a man, as well as a player. Brad Holmes said last week that, there was those early setbacks, but they look at that as if it's a blessing in disguise because it's allowed for this growth. So when he gets out there on Sunday and for the rest of the season, you're going to see the finished product of what Jameson Williams is and what they want him to be. So I think he's going to be a great player, and that speed that he has. We saw Xavier Worthy, what he could do for the Chiefs on Thursday night.
We saw it big time.
We saw it big time, and I think that's what the Lions are hoping that they can get from Williams, and I think that is what they can get. We'll see how that goes. I definitely think he, and from what I've seen, he just looks like a completely different player.
Not only is the wide receiver room stacked, you have Sam Laporta coming back as well, but that backfield, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, it's a backfield that's one of, if not the best running back tandem in the NFL. But for Jahmyr Gibbs, how much confidence do you have that Gibbs can be kind of unleashed at the beginning of the season? Because last year, towards the beginning, we saw Gibbs kind of more reserved. The coaching staff maybe wasn't using him as much as people would like.
Yes.
But considering you have a tandem now, what Gibbs can give you, considering what he did in the postseason a year ago. What can we expect from Gibbs at the beginning of the season?
Well, I think you're obviously going to see him a lot more than you did last year. I know, fantasy nerds were really upset.
Very much so.
That Jahmyr Gibbs was not playing as much as it seemed like Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell had talked like he would. I think you'll see him a lot more. I think he's probably your starting running back just to get things going and then work in with David Montgomery. And I look at this duo as they were 55 yards short of being 2 guys that had 1,000 yards last year. That hasn't happened since 2009 when the Carolina Panthers did it. Yep. So there's a very good shot that with David being healthy, for an entire season, and with Jahmyr obviously getting the start here now instead of kind of waiting until later, there's a really good chance that is something that happens. And if the Lions can do that, if they can get 2,000 yards receiving rushing with just 2 guys, and then add in Sione Vaki and Craig Reynolds and continue to push there with the run game. I mean, that they're going to be unbelievable. I mean, this is an established the run team, and if they can get those things done, it's going to really set up the pass, and that offense is going to be tremendous.
Is there any chance at all that the Lions are not what we expect them to be? Because Caleb Williams is coming in. People are expecting a C.J. Stroud type season. The Packers, the way they ended last year, Jordan Love, arguably the best quarterback in the NFL in the last 10 weeks of the season, 18 touchdowns, 1 interception. Looking at the NFC North, is there any outside chance that the Lions maybe don't get 4 losses and maybe 5 losses, 6 losses, potentially a wild card team as opposed to a division champion?
Yeah, I think that's always a possibility. But I look at the Packers, and I see a lot of, obviously Jordan Love had a great 9-10 game stretch there, and in the playoffs against Dallas, and even they came really close to beating the 49ers in the playoffs there as well. But I still think that's a team that needs a little bit more time. That receiving core is so it's young, and they're just not quite up to par to what the Lions or the Bears or the Vikings have. So I think that's something that could certainly hurt them. Their defense is also I think the Lions defense is probably better than the Packers defense as well. Chicago, there's a lot more Bryce Youngs out there than there are C.J. Strouds.
Big time. Understatement. Understatement.
Rookies, the quarterbacks, they struggle. It happens, and nobody's really been exempt from that except for a handful of guys. I mean, Peyton Manning threw like the record for most interceptions by a rookie. So it happens to even the greatest guys. And I think Caleb will be great someday, and I think he has an amazing supporting cast with Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen and everybody that he has there, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift. But it's going to take some time, and there'll be some growing pains for them. And then the Vikings I look at as a total rebuild. And with J.J. McCarthy out, they're going to continue that rebuild into next year because they don't really know what he is yet in terms of playing in the actual game. So.
All right, let's look at Week 1. Lions-Rams Sunday Night Football standalone game. It's a rematch of that wild card game last year, but what difference do you see in both teams from last year coming into this year?
Well, there's one huge difference for the Rams. There's not a Hall of Fame defensive tackle in the middle of that defensive line. I guess that'll help. Anymore. Yeah.
Well, the Lions do have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, but it does help when a Hall of Famer is not staring across from you.
Yeah, it definitely helps that Aaron Donald is not there. But I think the huge thing is that the Rams sort of they kind of downgraded in terms of their offensive line. They lost some guys. They're going to have a lot of injuries. They're going to be missing their starting left tackle, Alaric Jackson, with a suspension for the first 2 games. And then Rob Havenstein has been dealing with ankle injury on the right side, so he might not play. And if he doesn't play, then there's Warren McClendon coming in for them, and he's only played 3 games in his life. This will be his first career start. And then Jonah Jackson, the former Lions guard, he's going to be actually playing center for them now. He's never played center in the NFL. And they're going to move Steve Avila, who was their center last year, over to the left guard spot. So there was a lot of fluctuation with their offensive line. That should be a huge advantage for the Lions. On the negative side, here's another year for Puka Nacua and Stafford. Cooper Kupp should be a lot more healthy than he was last year when they played. So offensively, there's some scary things there, but as long as they can get to Stafford early and often with that busted up offensive line, I mean, that's a huge plus for the Lions.
And I think kind of an underrated part about Detroit coming into the season, they kept Ben Johnson, one of the best offensive coordinators a year ago, had a bunch of head coaching looks, but now he's back with the team. How much of an advantage is it to have yet another year of one of the best offensive minds in football?
Continuity is huge. I mean, it's something that you just can't replace. This is a guy that's been here for the last 2-3 years and has been working with this offense, installing it with some of the same guys that he's had from day one. To have this extra year when, everybody wants the Super Bowl, and that's what's supposed to happen this year. To have this guy come back and work with this offense and continue to get guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams and better, and to continue the career resurgence of Jared Goff, it's invaluable. It's so huge that they're able to keep basically their entire coaching staff on staff.
I know the team is young, relatively speaking. I know you locked up your core players, Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell. But how would you define a successful season for Detroit?
Well, I'm going to say the same thing that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have said when asked this question. It's Super Bowl. It's Super Bowl or bust for this team. I can't see them looking at anything less as a success. If they were to get back to the NFC Championship and lose again, that's a long way to go, and it's hard to do that 2 years in a row. But if it was another loss, that's not a successful season for this team. So anything less than Super Bowl is bad.
A Super Bowl appearance or a Super Bowl win?
Because
I know you got a team looking for a three-peat in Kansas City.
Yeah,
so.
and there's a good chance they'll be there too. But look, I think I speak for all Lions fans when I say this. We've been waiting this long. You better win it if you're going to get there.
So if they don't win it, are you saying the season is a failure?
I think if you just getting to the Super Bowl is not good enough. You got to win it.
You heard it here first. AtoZ Sports Lions beat reporter Mike Payton. Mike, we'll be talking to you every week throughout the season. We'll hear from him after the Rams game on Sunday, and obviously we're previewing the Lions season today. A lot of great stuff from Mike. Check out his stuff on AtoZSports.com. You'll have coverage all season right here on 13 Plus, and of course on AtoZSports.com. So thank you for taking the time.
Thanks.